This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan, and we are here on Sunday, August 13th. It is your Sunday edition of the CHGO Cubs Podcast. The Cubs drop the finale in Toronto, Brendan, but they do take 2 of 3 from a very good Toronto Blue Jays team. A 3-3 road trip that started earlier this week with a series loss to the Mets. And now the Cubs have another off day on Monday, and then they welcome the Chicago White Sox on Tuesday. So we have plenty to talk about. We will talk about Jameson Taillon's start on Sunday. We will talk about Javier Assad's really nice start this weekend in Toronto. Justin Steele, Alzolay, Dansby Swanson with a big power weekend here. Cody Bellinger staying hot. Plenty to talk about here. But Brendan, obviously it's a Sunday, so they're messing around. Yeah. Can I hear you, Brendan?
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
It's just one of those things. It's a tough thing. We've talked about this before because you take 2 or 3 in Toronto, you feel really good about that, right? Toronto's a good team. You're on the road. The Cubs have been very hot. But that being said, it's just annoying when they drop these Sunday games, and we're left with just a bad taste.
It is, but at the same time, it's been such a successful stretch.
Yeah.
And for me, seeing Javier Assad perform so well and Dansby's power come out and Nico's power come out, overall, I'm feeling pretty good. It's still been a successful stretch. The schedule softens up here in the next couple of weeks, and they got Milwaukee towards the end of the month. I feel really good about this. Of course, we're 4-16 recording on Sundays, and unfortunately, it is your fault, my fault, that we're 4-16, but we'll ride with it.
Yeah, we're gonna take it, and setting some context, right? I tweeted this the other day, but you look back since the All-Star break, and I think it's important to contextualize, right? Because obviously disappointing on Sunday. The Taillon thing is a major issue, right? And we'll talk about that. I know you're going to have some thoughts.
I got so many thoughts.
What was going on there. But you look back since the All-Star break, they lose that first series to Boston 2 of 3, and then since then, they take 2 of 3 from Washington. They win 3 of 4 against the Cardinals. They win both on the south side of Chicago. They take another 3 of 4 from the Cardinals. They take 3 of 4 at home from the Reds, 2 of 3 from Atlanta. They lose 2 of 3 to the Mets, and then they win 2 of 3 from Toronto. Just an absurd run that they have been on. And back-to-back weekends here, you took series from really good baseball teams. One of the best teams in the league in the Atlanta Braves at Wrigley Field last weekend. And then on the road here in Toronto, the Cubs winning those first 2 games. Toronto is, fighting for position in that wild card, but they're a playoff team. For all accounts and purposes, they're a playoff team. So it's just a really good stretch from this Cubs team. The Mets series is disappointing. I know a lot of people in the comments when I tweeted that were like, man, I wanted that Mets series. And Sunday's disappointing, but hey, they have been really close to perfect. So I do have a hard time getting too upset, even though, you do feel like that Mets series was winnable. And this game today, I think, was winnable, despite some of the decisions.
Well, you're seeing too, the farm system develop over the last 6 weeks, at least in my mind. I know a lot of the prospect guys may feel differently about this, but kind of exponential in terms of all these guys progressing. Pete Crow Armstrong's hitting 440-foot home runs every other day, man. And so you can kind of start to see oh, this is looking better than you and I thought 6 weeks ago. Fangraphs updated their prospect leaderboards. The Cubs currently, after the draft, have by Fangraphs the second best farm system by them. That's pretty impressive. And you can start seeing everything fall into place a little bit. Bellinger has been one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball now over the full course of the season, not just the last 2 months here. Things are looking good. My concern is, well, of course, we're going to get into it, but maybe the pitching depth as the season goes along here going into September, and you start seeing some things with Taillon that looked good for a while, maybe took a step back. There are some concerns in that regard, but overall, man, organizationally wide, from the MLB team down to AAA, I feel good. I'm surprised how good I actually feel because it was dark 6 weeks ago. I was thinking dark things, Corey. So for them to turn this around so quickly and seeing the attitude of the guys, Dansby's comments about the team's attitude, Gomes' comments about the team's attitude, I feel good. I'm surprised how good I actually feel.
Yeah, and look, like Marcus Stroman, the reports are that he's going to be activated off the injured list and make that start Wednesday against the White Sox at beautiful historic Wrigley Field. If you are coming to the CHGO takeover, that will be Marcus Stroman. Apparently, that is the report there. So a nice thing. And look, we've said this before, and Taillon has been good since the All-Star break. There's no denying that. But they are going to need Marcus Stroman to come back and pretty immediately be the real deal Marcus Stroman. Yeah. They need it. They need that kind of top of the rotation pitching. They need somebody to support Justin Steele, right? Like he's doing his best to make all these good starts. But I think again when they were heading into the trade deadline, we kind of looked at everything and we're like, man, they're going to need a run to have Jed not sell and to save their season. And, they're like almost winning every game, right? Yeah. So I'm very pleased with their weekend in Toronto. I did echo a lot of the sentiments that we saw on, Sunday, though. It did feel a little kind of Madden era Cubs, right? With the lineup, Candy not playing, Tauchman not playing, leaving Taillon out there in what was still a winnable game in that fourth inning, right? Like, I didn't love the way that Sunday was handled, but at the same time, like you do get to an area where you're like, man, they're playing really good ball since the All-Star break. They're winning nearly every series. I don't know how much I really want to get in the weeds on nitpicking that stuff,
Well, that's where I'm kind of falling at. Like, it is mid-August. Guys go through different, very minor injuries, some, chronic knacks, so to speak. We can get into the lineup construction. I know a lot of talk about Hap batting third. I know a lot of talk about maybe moving Nico down. I get all of that, right? Like in a vacuum on paper, that probably makes sense to move both those guys down. But in my mind, at the same time, those are kind of like I feel like we're nitpicking there, and sure. we're not privy to all the information going on either. And the degree to which that makes a significant impact is unclear. Overall, what needs to happen is the pitching needs to be stable. The middle of the order continues to produce. Bellinger continues to be that MVP caliber guy. And Hap continues to be one of the better hitters on this roster. So should Nico be moved back? Should we move Ian Happ up to bat leadoff? What does that do with Tauchman? I get all of that, but those to me are like still marginal decisions, as weird as that sounds. I don't think over the next, 6 weeks that you can say, okay, by moving Hap up to leadoff, automatically you're going to start producing 2-3 more runs a week. I don't think it's really that clear. And given some of the history of these players, especially Hap, it's like, you're winning so many games right now. Like, do you want to mess with that comfort level? That's kind of where I stand with that. But again, on paper, yeah, like I understand some of the nitpicky complaints that I have, that you have, that other fans have as well. But I'm at the point where it's just like, you know what? I don't care. As long as you continue to pitch well and hit well, it should be okay.
Yeah, I think the concern is going to come from you're in a tight race here, right?
Yeah.
So as we are recording this, we started this live broadcast here on YouTube. If you're watching live on YouTube, hop in that chat. If you're listening later, obviously, keep the context with that. But as we're recording it, the Cubs are 3.5 behind the Milwaukee Brewers. The White Sox, absolutely no help this weekend. Just abysmal baseball on the south side, per usual there.
Yeah.
But, you're looking at the wild card race. The Cubs are a half game out of the Marlins, who are playing right now. You're a half game ahead of the Reds, like you're a few games ahead of Arizona. But as it sits, the Cubs don't hold one of those playoff spots. So I think as you're in such a tight race, trying to catch the Brewers and trying to hold on to the get in a wild card spot, that's where people are going to say like, hey, like you should have gone for the sweep today. Like you have an off day on Monday. You have another off day this week on Thursday, I believe. Like get Candy in there, keep Tauchman in there, try to win the game. And when you're down 5-2 there, don't send Taillon back out there because he looked terrible, right? Like try to win the game. And then you can say, well, Wesneski has had his struggles. Killian, I don't think at this point can pitch at the major league level. So did it matter? I don't know. But I don't know. It did feel a little Madden-ish on Sunday here where it was kind of like, we won the series. Like, whatever, let's go back to Wrigley. You're in a tight race, man, against a lot of teams for those wild card spots. You got to win every day. You do, but when Taillon is that bad today, it doesn't matter. It's like it's a lose-lose situation. And I can understand the other side of it, too, is if you take – first off, I would put Wesneski in that third inning regardless. But the counter to that is, well, if you put in Wesneski, who's also struggled recently, then you're potentially amplifying Attack's bullpen despite having the off days. Yeah. And so, like, at that point, Taillon looks like garbage currently. Wesneski is kind of in a sensitive point in his development and in his role with this current major league team. Like, does it actually matter? Ultimately, Taillon needs to pitch better today, as he's done for the past 6 starts now. It just didn't happen. All right, so those general thoughts, right? Again, my main takeaway from the week, that Mets series is disappointing. I for the life of me, will never understand why their pitching strategy was throw meatballs to Pete Alonso for 3 straight games, but whatever, right? That was earlier this week. We've moved past it. This is a nice win in Toronto. Toronto is a good team. Toronto is not an easy place to go and play. It's a different kind of field, right? Different kind of atmosphere. You got to have your passport ready to get there. This is a very nice series win, especially that it started with, Javier Assad getting in there and kind of filling in with a spot start. So I do want to start kind of with that as we are moving into, kind of looking at some of the specifics from this series in Toronto, at least. It was a 6-2 win on Friday. Javier Assad picking up the win. And this was interesting, right? Because as he had pitched, everybody saw that interview that Mark Leiter Jr. did in the locker room that circulated on social media, where he was talking about how he feels like Javier Assad is one of the best pitchers in baseball, right? And I think that caught a lot of people off guard. Then as he was pitching, Adbert Alzolay is very active on Twitter, and he kept saying, like, we all knew that Javi could do what he did on Friday and the type of stuff that he has and things like that. So on Friday, 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 1 walk, just 2 strikeouts, but 7 innings against this Blue Jays offense with some of the hitters that they have in a spot where he has not been completely stretched out, Javier Assad, right? He's been asked to do a whole host of different things in this Cubs bullpen, but what a big start. We have talked so much, especially with, Drew Smyly came out of the bullpen on Sunday. Taillon had been really good since the All-Star break, struggles on Sunday. Kyle Hendricks has been very hit or miss, since his return. Some really good starts, some terrible starts. They needed guys to go deep in games, take some leverage off of this bullpen, and go out there and deliver a big-time start for this team. They needed more, I am going to win this game on the mound for this team kind of starts. Javier Assad gets the call, and he delivers just that. So I know you have a lot of thoughts on this, but to kind of contextualize it, what did he do that worked on Friday? And what do you think the kind of long-term prospect is for him if he sticks in this rotation, which as we go forward here, I would imagine is going to be part of the plan? Personally, I'd like to see the plan persist where Assad is taking the starts. In a perfect world, I'd like Hayden Wesneski to take control of the rotation. It just seems like right now, given their current competitive timeline, it doesn't seem like it's likely at this point. So given how everyone's pitched with Smyly, Wesneski, Assad tends to have the most diverse repertoire. And I always like that because to me, when you have, in some cases, 5-6 pitches, I think it gives you a better chance of adapting and finding which pitches work the best. And with Assad, we heard Leiter talk about him being one of the best pitchers in the league, as you alluded to. This has been going back since the Cubs convention
where someone was asked, I thought it was a joke. I don't think it's a joke anymore. I forgot who was asked on the team, but they were asked who has the best fastball on the staff. And Javier Assad's name came up. And I laughed at that at the time, thinking it was a joke. And maybe in the back of my mind, I'm like, well, he is throwing faster in the World Baseball Classic. Maybe it's not a joke. I don't know if that's a joke anymore. Like, then you start digging into what makes him good. And you see the outlier in terms of pitch stuff that he has, and it still doesn't make quite sense to me. He's like an outlier by definition. I was talking to a few pitching coaches about this. I'm like, why is he so good? And some of them don't even know why he's so good as well. And going into his stuff, I have a nice graph here, Corey, that you're going to love. I know. So going into his stuff, I'm trying to figure out, okay, like what is making Javier Assad differ from the rest? And one of the biggest traits that he has is to his sinker, his one of his dominant pitch types, and its ability to have relative ride on it. Now, if you look at sinkers and how much they typically relatively ride, they have about 8 inches of induced vertical break. But for Javier Assad, he has over 11 inches. That's a pretty significant difference.
Give me layman's term it for me.
So typically when you have like a 4-seam fastball or a 2-seam fastball, because they have more backspin, they typically look as if they're carrying up. When you exclude gravity, take gravity out of the equation, those pitches will go up, but you do have gravity pushing down, right? So a lot of different pitching coaches and a lot of these different teams are trying to find fastballs that have good backspin that will ride a little bit more. And so for Javier Assad's sinker, it rides more, but the weird thing about this is that typically you want sinkers to dive a little bit more. So it's weird. It's not to say, oh, this is why he's good because he has more ride on his sinker. It's weird to me because this is one of his differentiating factors, and typically you would want sinkers to dive more to get like your Kyle Hendricks-esque ground ball rate, right? He's not doing that. And then you look at what's different for Javier Assad is that cutter as well. That cutter also has more relative ride on it. And then you start looking at his 4-seam fastball. His 4-seam fastball also has more relative ride, or has more relative ride and relative cut to it as well. We heard about Jameson Taillon talk about his 4-seam fastball being around like 5 inches of horizontal break. That's where Javier Assad's 4-seam is right now. And that's one of the reasons why it's not as like significant as Justin Steele, but Justin Steele has that like cut rising fastball. Javier Assad's fastball is not quite like that, but it has more relative cut to it compared to most of these guys. So this is all to say he has 6 different pitch types. He uses them pretty equally across different lineups, and that means he can match up well against them, and he has stuff that looks unique. Now, if you look at this last comment here, Corey, which is confusing me, if you look at his stuff and you throw his stuff into like run probability models, they all hate his stuff. They all rate his stuff below average, and it doesn't quite make sense to me. Also, too, I think he's one of those unique guys that just might be an outlier. You see the results. To me, when I hear Leiter talk about him, when I hear pitching coaches talk about him and other players, like, you know, that kind of gets put in the back of my mind. Like, it's not that important that these stuff models don't like him. Like I put more emphasis on what these like coaches say and the results that we're seeing. And the results have been unbelievably good right now.
Yeah. And, you know, I know you tweeted, kind of his, pitch location chart during the game. Like he was just executing those pitches. He was nailing the edges, really precision command from Assad on Friday. And again, look, they have some off days. You're going to have Stroman coming back. They have some different decisions they have to make, but I'd like to see him continue to get these opportunities if some other guys struggle and they need guys to go out there, because this was a big time performance, and I think you got to reward that stuff. And you know, look, we're heading down the stretch here. Like this is kind of the time, and we saw this with Seiya Suzuki. You're either performing or you're not, right? And they're going to try to, they gave Seiya a breather. He's looked good since he's come back. Maybe something we'll talk about toward the end here. But it's the same with the pitchers, right? Like Taillon had been on a good stretch. Smiley moved to the bullpen. Like you got to be quick with this stuff. You're in a really tight playoff race here. Like there isn't a lot of time for You know, you got to ride the hot hand sometimes.
How do you feel about Ross and his timeliness in making these decisions? For example, do you like the speed at which he moved Smiley to the bullpen? Do you like, I guess, giving more opportunities for Assad in the rotation, or do you wish this were to occur earlier in the season? How do you feel just overall about Ross and like making the moves now?
I don't know. I mean, I think sometimes he's been too slow, but I also recognize that he doesn't make the roster, right?
Yeah.
I think, Smiley had been good for them for a good stretch. And, I think sometimes it's hard to kind of say like, okay, we're pulling the plug on this. You got a veteran. And I know Ross is going to like that stuff, right? He's a gritty veteran. He knows how to get the job done. I think, again, it's a tough balance. He doesn't make the roster. Some of the guys that you've brought up have not performed well, right? Like we talked, Hayden's been very hit or miss. Killian, not good on Sunday, like things like that. So it's going to be tough for Ross to say, yeah, I'm going to move this other guy, for this. But again, it's a tight playoff race. You're going to have to be aggressive and go with what's working. And this is where David Ross's kind of feel for his guys, which I think is a lot of how he manages, right? Like Jed in the front office are going to provide him with information. Tommy Hotovy is going to provide information, but I think ultimately Ross does like feel a lot, how he feels guys look in the cage or taking swings in games and stuff like that. He's going to have to be aggressive on some of this stuff.
I kind of like that. I know it's like not like your typical like numbers type argument.
Yeah.
But the reason I like that is because baseball inherently is difficult to project, right? So as a result, if a manager or coach sees something that they think is important and has in their experience been a preface to success, I kind of value that more than looking at like, against lefties, his WRC plus is 95 versus this guy whose WRC
Well, I feel
plus
like
is
Ross
100.
does that too much.
And like
it seems that they play the handedness matchups way too much when it is just not really that indicative of who should be in or out of the lineup at times or pitching.
Yeah, I mean, you can point to like, I don't know. I mean, people have argued against that too. It's like you look at Candelario today versus Madrigal, right? And like, the argument is, Madrigal's been pretty good against lefties. Candelario's WRC plus is 98 against lefties. So it's a weird mix. But I guess the reason I brought that up is because I don't think these decisions are always going to be numerically based. And these numerically based decisions have a high degree of error to them. And I'm always reminded too, when we talk about this, and when we had Tommy Hotovy on the CHGO Cubs show during the offseason, the guys asked him, Luke asked him, what has been the biggest difference of this front office versus the last front office? And why is the pitching developed or organizationally wide recently? Tommy Hotovy said cohesion. And then talking with other people around, the league, I'm always wondering, why are these like teams so good at developing? They bring up the word cohesion. And that's always, to me, been, when talking about the front office, kind of like difficult to reconcile, because some of the moves I don't like, but at the same time, I do really respect and I like the cohesion from Craig Breslow and from Tommy Hotovy and David Ross and Daniel Moskowitz. And like I like that. And you're seeing the moves that the front office are making with those coaching input. And I like that. So I think when Ross makes these decisions, as a fan personally, I'm always thinking, what are we missing? And because they have had success developing guys, I'm going to be more inclined to default to what they're seeing, because it may not make sense. I may like it. I'm going to complain to you regardless, but I can understand that we really are missing a huge slice of all the information.
Yeah, so let's hit our first ad break here. I want to read a couple of the super chats that we got, but I do also want to note we are reading the chat. I see a lot of chatter about Patrick Wisdom playing first base. I have a question about Candy batting seventh in some of those games, being lower in the order. These are all fair questions, and we will try to address them all. I think they will get into play here. And yes, we will talk about Taillon from Sunday, because obviously Taillon is a member of this rotation, getting him right and back to how he had been.
We might do a 4-hour show today.
We could. But I will also say, we should note Wisdom, a couple bad plays at first today. Madrigal with a bad play at third. So these are definitely things that factored into Taillon's outing today, but he still wasn't good. So it was all not good.
It was his worst start of the year.
I do want to hit our first ad break and read these super chats, but okay. I will also say I know things happen, things come up. Before they traded him, remember Candy had that like shoulder thing, like people were making sure he wasn't hurt. So like maybe he just needs a day off. It's fine, right? Everybody doesn't have to play every day. But I don't know, man. Like you've got Cody Bellinger is capable of playing gold glove defense at first base. Mike Tauchman has been your spark plug. He's not, needing to be platooned based on who is pitching. He's playing really well just overall. Patrick Wisdom's not a first baseman. Like I just don't love it. It just, again, every game is precious. You need to give guys rest, and it's fine. They took 2 of 3. They won the series. It's okay, right? But I don't know, man. We're in mid to late August. You really got to stop with the people out of position stuff. Like it just is not – it cost him today.
Well, he said he was going to be doing that. Even when they traded for Candy, he was like, Wisdom will get more time at first base. Yeah. So, and I don't know. I don't know how good he's at first base. We've barely seen him at first base. He was my first memory of Patrick Wisdom, and I know you have to do the ad break here, but my first memory of Patrick Wisdom is filling in for Rizzo during spring training. Mm-hmm. He was always the 8th inning guy in Mesa for those years. So I don't know. Maybe he is more comfortable in first base.
Yeah. Chris Roldan in the chat says Trey Mancini Jr. at first base today. Yes, on defense, but Patrick Wisdom also did hit a home run, which, that was not going to happen with Trey Mancini ever again. So I don't know, guys.
Let's do our super chats in the ad break.
A couple super chats we appreciate. Alex says, usually a podcast listener, but today I made it to the stream. Keep it up, guys. Let's go Cubs. Appreciate that, Alex. Happy to have you in the live stream. Max Steffen, who I know tweeted at us as well. CHGO Weekly Recap is my Sunday service. We appreciate that, Max. We appreciate all you guys here in the live chat, listening on the podcast, wherever you are coming to us. We appreciate the support. And CHGO is supported by our wonderful sponsors like Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping, a place where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. Sunnyside has everything you need to elevate your summer. It is a one-stop shop for all of your cannabis needs. No matter where you are on your cannabis journey, easy online ordering and in-store pickup, transparent loyalty program, and it is Illinois' favorite dispensary. I have mentioned it before, but I shop regularly at the Sunnyside location on Clark Street, just steps from beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. It's a beautiful, clean facility. And as we say, each time we do this sponsor read, whether you are an experienced, customer or a brand new customer, their staff can answer all your questions. They have a wide array of products from vapes, edibles, pre-rolls, etc. Whatever kind of question, whatever you're looking to get out of your cannabis journey, Sunnyside's knowledgeable staff can help you. They can direct you in the right place, and you will have a wonderful experience shopping the Sunnyside house of brands like Mindy's, Good News, and Cresco. Cresco, reliably excellent cannabis, consistent quality, experience, and availability of flower, vapes, concentrates, and pre-rolls. Also, it is summer, and we are doing Sunnyside Summer Fridays. It is the perfect way to kick off a weekend, and as such, our Sunnyside, of course, this is Sunday, but our feel-good player, the player who is giving us the good vibes for this particular summer weekend, I'm going with Dansby Swanson, Brendan. He came into this weekend 0 for 16 before that home run on Saturday, and that was a mammoth home run. He follows with more on Sunday. Just a really nice stretch for Dansby Swanson. So he was my Sunnyside Summer Friday feel-good player of the week here. And don't forget, through August, head to sunnyside.shop and use code CHGO25 at checkout for 25% off your total order. One use per customer, not stackable with other promotions. That is not only for new customers. Anyone can use our code CHGO25. Must be 21 or older or an Illinois Med card holder.
If you want to see Dansby Swanson this week, Corey, use Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun that you'll have. It's easy to find tickets and buy tickets for every kind of event in your area. What I like, they have images of your seat views. I'm picky. I like to sit kind of like towards home plate to get those good views on those pitch types. And forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Use Game Time to go catch those Cubs Sox games. Go meet you, Corey, Wednesday for the meetup at CHGO. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CHGO for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHGO for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Absolutely. All right, let's just do Jameson Taillon, right? Let's just get this out of the way. The chat's talking about it. You're thinking about it. Let's just talk about it.
Okay.
Jameson Taillon on Sunday. Again, he had been on a really nice stretch post All-Star break, but 3 innings, 8 hits, 8 earned, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. That ERA still sitting at 5.7. He throws 89 pitches here. Like I said, I really was not a fan out of. I know they have to protect the bullpen, but this was a winnable game here early. The Blue Jays put up a 5 spot in that second, but I thought the lack of kind of aggressiveness. It gets to 6, so Taillon starts that 4th inning. Merrifield singles, Brandon Belt singles, Vlad Jr. singles. That brings in the 6th run, and then, of course, now you're bringing Hayden into a very dirty inning, right? Like a super dirty inning. And the Blue Jays continue to add on. They had 3 in that 4th. Now you're talking about an 8-2 game. I did not like that. Brendan, I want you to talk about Taillon and what went wrong today and how he can kind of get right for these final, kind of several starts here to finish the season, because it's going to be important, right? But if we're talking the managerial stuff today, I know the bullpen's been taxed, but you just had an off day. You have an off day on Monday. I think you have another off day this week. Like, he didn't have it today. 5-2 with the way this offense has been going is a winnable game. 8-2 is not.
Yeah, it's fair. As I said, my preference is be aggressive, take him out, risk some of the bullpen stamina just to try to win that game. I get it. I understand maybe the confidence in the middle part of the long relief bullpen is not quite there for us, so I get that as well. Now, what's going on with Taillon is a mixture of good and bad. Today, it was all bad. Like, all of his pitch types looked awful today. The 4-seam fastball looked awful today. Tons of arm side of run. I thought they were sinkers that were coming out of his hand. So much arm side of run to them. So with Taillon, the question is, can he survive given his current pitch mix? Because he was talking over the past couple of weeks here to Sahad of Sharma at The Athletic about what is making him good and what he's trying to work on. And what has made him good lately is that curveball. He's been happy with his curveball being more north to south, not having as much sweeping action to it. That's been great. Today, he couldn't command that curveball. Curveball was out. He was also talking about the bad over the last couple of weeks, and the bad is that 4-seam fastball. That 4-seam fastball is his dominant pitch type. So when a pitcher is talking about, my 4-seam fastball is not good, to me, that gives me a lot of reason for concern and apprehension going forward. And with Taillon, his 4-seam fastball is just leaking way more than what we saw in the past 2 years. And he talked about this. Taillon said specifically, I need my 4-seam fastball to not be moving with 7 to 10 inches of horizontal break, arm side of run. It needs to be moving more like 3 to 5 inches of horizontal break, having the same shape, Corey, as Javier Assad. Like, that's the shape that Taillon's going for. And it's not been working for him. So, I guess the question is, why does that even matter? And I think I have a good video why I think that matters. So if you look at this animation right here, so you have a blue pitch type and a red pitch type. So if you look at this, you see that the red pitch type, this four-seam fastball, is more straight, whereas the blue four-seam fastball has a little bit more of like an angular arm side run action to this. That pitch type, because it has more arm side run against left-handed batters, is going to have more of a probability of hanging out over the middle of the plate and getting massive platoon splits. You don't want that. You want something a little bit more straight that you can handle and negate platoon splits. That four-seam fastball has been his worst pitch type this year from a run value perspective. So my thinking is for Taillon, it doesn't appear as if he's going to get that four-seam fixed. And he even said this, it might be an off-season project. I hate hearing that. But if he can have confidence in his curveball, in his cutter, in his sweeper, which he has a lot of confidence in and is still looking pretty good, he might be able to survive and everything still might be okay and he might be like an average pitcher. But my hope is that four-seam does get handled. He does get that feel for it, but I'm a little pessimistic because he himself has said he doesn't have that feel for that pitch. So he has to be perfect with that curveball, has to be perfect for that sinker and cutter and sweeper. And if he's not, then the results can be disastrous. And today, the results were disastrous. And I'm worried about that going in the next 6 weeks here.
Yeah, I mean, look, again, I think it's extremely important that, understatement of the year, that Marcus Stroman comes back on Wednesday, if that is indeed when he is activated off the injured list, and looks like Marcus Stroman. We're going to get a good kind of comparison of it because he's going back up against the White Sox, who he struggled against. The Cubs came back and won that game, but he did not have a good outing on the south side of Chicago.
They need Stroman. If Stroman does not come back, they're not going to go anywhere. He is absolutely vital for this team.
Yeah. Look, it's a work in progress with Jameson Taillon. It has been, even with the blow up on Sunday, he's got a 3.7 ERA in his last 7 starts. He's 5-1 in those starts for how much you want to, put in the win-loss record. He was losing every game he started, so it's nice that that has reversed. But it's not rocket science, right? And I don't think it makes us geniuses for pointing this out, but they are going to need better starting pitching. It's a simple fact. Stroman is going to have to come back and be vintage Marcus Stroman for this stretch run. Kyle Hendricks is going to have to settle things down and get rid of some of those bad outings, and Taillon is going to have to be more stable, and he had been, but so this is a little worrisome, right? This outing on Sunday looked a lot like those early season outings where the Cubs...
It was worse.
The Cubs offense is out of it early. They're in a really big hole. He does not eat innings, even though Ross tried to get him to eat innings. So you're not saving the bullpen. You're going to have to, get this sorted out. And I know, you're the type who's looking at some of the... pitch type stuff and the data and all this other stuff. If they can't get the fastball ironed out until the offseason, whatever, right? That's not good. You're going to have to figure something out, right? Because, you're going to need this stability. And as we're talking about, you are in, again, a very tight playoff race. You are in a playoff race with a month and a half of baseball left to go. You can't have too many starts like this from these guys. And you can't be looking at Justin Steele and saying, hey, dude, you better win today because, you're, sort of our only reliable starting pitcher right now. And we know Justin Steele is going to say, yeah, I got it. Don't worry about it. But it's not a good place. And you get a really good start on Friday from Javier Assad. But, how much are you counting on that going forward? And how much of an expectation is that to put on a young guy, getting these opportunities in the big leagues for the first time? That's not a good situation to be in either. So, and as we say that, it was another solid outing from Justin Steele, not his best, but 5 innings, 6 hits, 3 runs, no walks, 7 Ks, a 2.79 ERA on the season. He is, of course, over his career high in innings pitched here at the big league level. So there's certainly, and concern is a strong word, but something to monitor, right? You don't know how guys' bodies are going to respond to that, how their arms are going to respond to that. But against a tough offense, that was a really nice start for Justin Steele. And I didn't really hate from Ross, he had only thrown 84 pitches, but kind of being hey, this was good. A lot of strikeouts today. Let's get into the bullpen and keep you fresh here.
Yeah, for me, I am a little concerned about Steele going into September. Like that's just how I am, right? Like a lot is riding on Steele having that stamina,
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
and
That's why we need Stroman to look good on
and
Wednesday.
that's
It would
why,
really kind of calm things down a
yeah,
little bit.
and I mean, like ultimately, like you need both. Like it's not to say, oh, like if the Steele looks bad, then we're gonna be okay because he has Stroman. Like ultimately, you need both to like succeed, but it does put more of a strain on Steele if your bullpen's taxed, if your other starters can't go deep in the game. For example, let's say, you taxed Wesneski, let's say Smiley is getting lit up continuously. There might be a time where Steele has to eat innings because your bullpen is taxed. And then I start thinking, man, like, those innings might be best served in higher leverage situations. But because the bullpen is being taxed, because the back end of the rotation isn't good, I can see that snowballing a little bit. So for Stroman to come back and look how he was looking for the majority of the first few months there is, in my mind, the single greatest important piece for this team going into the next 2 months. It has to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you look at ultimately where you might be, right? If you make the playoffs, you're going to have to play short series, right? So you're not necessarily going to need 5 great starters. It's certainly nice to have, but you're not going to need that. What you need is to be able, you go to that wild card series, it's 3 games, right? We've seen that this group could score the runs when they need to. They could put together good efforts against tough starting pitching, things like that. And at this point, you feel really good about this back end of this bullpen to lock down games, whether it's, Fulmer, Julian Merriweather, Mike Leiter Jr., and Adbert Alzolay, who's just been out of his mind, right? And, I think we'll touch on him a little bit too. But you also, you just need to be in a position where it's like, all right, who bridges the gap to those guys? You know that Justin Steele is going to be one of those guys. You hope that Stroman comes back. He was describing, sort of that injury is giving him some trouble pushing off the mound and all that other stuff. So you hope that's behind him. He can get back to doing what he's doing. And, realistically, you're going to need what, Brendan? One more guy to feel pretty good about? You can piece together, the Cubs had those John Lackey starts in 2016. It's fine. You know what I mean? But you need more than Justin Steele. That's the kind of key takeaway. We know this offense can score enough runs, even if they're inconsistent at times. We feel, I think, really good about this back end of this bullpen in locking down close games. They've proven that a lot over the last week, winning some of these close games against the Braves and the Blue Jays and really locking those games down, right?
Yeah.
You need the starting pitching. And I think it's one of those things where a lot of people at the deadline kind of thought, hey, maybe add a little bit more depth here to this rotation. That might be a good thing to do. They didn't. So as we go down the stretch here, they're going to have to figure it out. Taillon's going to have to lock it down, or you're going to have to try some other things.
Yeah, we'll get into maybe more specifics after this ad break here. But first one from our wonderful sponsor, Circle K. We, especially me, are so excited to partner with our friends at Circle K. Check out our local Circle K for the best coffee, beer, snack selection, and premium gas. Look out for freebies and giveaways down the road. There's 3 Circle Ks within 5 miles of me. If I need to pick me up on my ride home, I'll stop at Circle K. Thanks to Circle K for sponsoring us as CHGO. Visit your nearest Circle K to pick up all your favorite finds. Another ad break here from Goose Island. Goose Island has been supporting CHGO for several months now. Chicago's beer since 1988. We love our Goose Island. They have a very deep beer roster. The Goose IPA is a 6-time medal winner at Great American Beer Fest. It's always in style, has a citrus aroma, a bold hop finish. They have the Tropical Beer Hug, which is a dry hopped Imperial IPA that's 9.9% alcohol and dangerously easy to drink. They have the Full Pocket Pilsner, an everyday beer, my personal favorite recently. I go back and forth between the Full Pocket Pilsner and the 312 Wheat Ale. Kind of depends. If I want to throw back like 4, 5 beers, I'll throw back the Full Pocket Pilsner. If I want to take it down a notch, maybe 312 Wheat Ale. And by the way, Goose Island's logo, I know you always hold up that sticker. Phenomenal logo. I absolutely love that logo. Grab ultra fresh brewery exclusive beers at Goose Island's original brew house on Clybourne Avenue in Lincoln Park, or from their tap room on Fulton Street in Westtown. Goose Island Beer Company, Chicago's beer.
I always say it. Smash Burger is really good at that tap room. Got a super chat from Fernando. Appreciate that, Fernando. Fernando's in here every day. Sunday Crew Breakdown is the best thing on CHGO. Appreciate that, my friend. I also should note, as we finish the discussion on Taillon, again, I think he's one of those guys that you've ended up breaking down a lot, like really digging into the metrics and things like that. And, that's going to be some people's flavor. It's not going to be other people's flavor, but it's important, man.
What are you trying to say? You don't like my flavor?
I'm trying to say that, I think there may be times where it's like, man, it's a lot of discussion on Taillon or a lot of breakdown on Taillon. They got to get it right. He's on a 4-year deal, and as we're talking about, they need a third starter right now. They need a legitimate, bona fide third starter, and that's why we break it down so much. We're not in the pitch lab. Like Dr. Brendan Miller here is not going to fix Jameson Taillon himself, but we're going to try to figure it out, right? I think does Tommy Hotovy follow you on Twitter?
Yeah,
or
he does.
He did? I don't know. Maybe he's looking at those graphs. I don't know, but I just wanted to say, it is worth noting, Jameson Taillon earlier this week did deliver that start that you needed. He was phenomenal in New York against the Mets, and that's a series the Cubs only won one game. Same thing. They needed that start. Just like Assad on Friday, you need these starters to go out and bail everybody else out, right? We've seen a lot of games where Justin Steele has bailed the entire team out. Marcus Stroman bailed the entire team out when the offense wasn't scoring any runs. Lately, since the All-Star break or whatever, the offense is bailing everybody out. They're scoring 16 or 20 runs at times, right? We've seen this bullpen lock down some close games and kind of bail short starts out, but you need those starters to do it. So Sunday was a clunker, but Taillon he just gave you one of those starts in New York earlier this week. We need more of them, though.
Yeah, and that's when we talk about, okay, what is he doing well? What is he not doing well? We talk about the four seam. I talk about the four seam, and maybe that comes off as being like, oh, he's screwed? He's not going to be good for the rest of the season? No, that's not necessarily the case, because at the same time, going back to earlier in the episode, I like guys who have so many different pitch types. Taillon's one of those guys. He has a cutter, sinker, four seam, sweeper, and curve. So he has 6 pitch types. He can make it work. He's a starting pitcher for a reason. The hope is, though, that you can offset some of the struggles with one pitch type by having greater feel for a different pitch type, and the success has been a result of him having better feel for that curveball. So in one sense, I am encouraged, relatively speaking, compared to earlier in the season, that he can be a successful guy, even without that four seam. But I always talk about the highest possible ceiling. And I think that's possible too. I just don't think you're going to expect that this year unless that command is super tight. And it's all possible too.
Yeah. All right. I do want to talk a little bit about Dansby Swanson, Brendan. I know you hate talking about Dansby Swanson, but nice weekend for him. Thought he was going to have the kind of big hit of the day on Sunday too. Hit a towering home run on Saturday, and I loved, there was that piece in The Athletic from Ken Rosenthal about just kind of the Cubs' approach to the deadline, and Dansby Swanson being one of the very vocal voices that wanted this team to stay together. We've talked, when they signed him, so much about every interview you heard him do when he signed with the Cubs. Winning. I want to win. I want to win. I'm here to win. Win, 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 win. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And you read that piece from Rosenthal at The Athletic, and it did echo a lot of what we've said here on the CHGO Cubs show as a group, and other people have written about and kind of talked about leading up to that deadline, and Dansby kind of echoed it. I really liked some of these quotes. One of them, my thing was, you can't just turn it on and off when you want to win. If we want to be good, the expectation needs to be that we're going to win. Just because it's not going purely as planned this year, you get to a deadline, you can't just say we're done this year. I love that. You know what I mean? And we did talk about that, where the expectation of winning and getting some of these players who have not played in these environments before is really important. And whether it is World Series or bust this year, right? Which throughout the, kind of entire approach, it has not been, right? But this is an opportunity. You are in these races, and showing that as an organization and getting this experience is really important. You look at that start for Justin Steele on Saturday in Toronto. Each time Justin Steele is out there at this point, it is sort of by proxy the biggest start of his career. He just doesn't have that much experience in these games because of the teams that he started his career on. So like Justin Steele giving you a win in Toronto against a good offense in the middle of a playoff race, like that's big experience for him, regardless of what happens in this season. So I think we knew that Dansby was the kind of leader, captain, whatever type when you brought him in. You heard it in those interviews, but especially reading that piece and kind of him going to bat for this group and kind of going to the front office and saying, look, man, like this selling is not the culture I wanted to be a part of. Like we are building something here, and whether it all comes together this year or not, it starts now.
That's what you signed him for as well, beyond just the power and like the, all-time best defensive value that he provides. There is value to leadership, clubhouse presence. There's always this dichotomy of like, well, all that matters is runs scored versus runs saved. But what goes into saving runs and producing runs is somewhat influenced by the clubhouse and the environment you promote. With Dansby Swanson, you've seen the effect he's had on players this year already. We can point to Christopher Morel, for example, early on in San Francisco when he had a good series. He said, I was able to change how I attack games because of Swanson, because how he prepares, I took that into my own preparation. Even dating back earlier on to last year, you've seen, I know he's our favorite guy now, but like even Morel and the deep breath, right? Like having who he respected, Wilson Contreras, kind of promote that and get him to a different level of attacking certain at-bats. That stuff does matter. And I think ultimately when we talk about like leadership and the clubhouse presence, like yes, wins is going to correlate with that type of environment. But at the same time, you can look across the city, Corey, look at the White Sox. If I were a White Sox fan right now, I would be the most miserable human being on the face of the earth. All their players are coming out, bashing that franchise, bashing the environment, bashing pitchers. They're getting into fights. People are questioning their work ethic, their attitude, their willingness to sacrifice. And there's never an inkling of that within this club, within this Cubs clubhouse. And then you can see that percolating up through the system, where I was listening to Pete Armstrong talk with Lance Brodowski today about just the environment, the work ethic, and want to be part of a winning culture. And there is, in my mind, going to be like a direct effect of having a good environment and being motivated to try new things and to adjust. And those always go hand in hand. So the stats and all this stuff, like I kind of get a little annoyed with when people kind of just brush that aside, because like, I don't know, like everyone has their own work environment. Like we all have our own jobs, right? You don't want to go to work with people who are just miserable human beings. You don't want your boss to not be confident in you, right? Like you want other coworkers to also be confident in you and you learn from them, everyone to be successful, right? It's the same thing with this Cubs clubhouse. At this point, like, put another C on his jersey. Like Dansby Swanson is that guy. We always talk about Rizzo put a C in his chest. Like Dansby is that guy, man. Like I would, if Dansby Swanson were on my team, I would sacrifice my life. I would run through brick walls. I would run straight through that ivy, Corey. I would break my skull for Dansby Swanson.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I agree. I mean, I love it. And, like you said, I mean, I think, it's not apples to apples, but I think the comparison with the White Sox is a good one, right? Like, obviously that's a mess right now, but that's the type of thing you don't want. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want, obviously, you don't want that culture. You don't want that reputation permeating through your clubhouse. You want the one that it appears Dansby Swanson is helping to cultivate here, where people are hungry to win. And of course, teams are often going to believe in each other, right? Like, listen to everybody in spring training. Like, we got all the talent we need right here, right? We're going to win. Like, it doesn't matter what team it is. But these guys believe it, and they're fighting for it, and their performance on the field, as we've laid out since this, like all-star break stretch, they're backing it up. They're backing up what they asked from Jed Hoyer to kind of support this team and, let them have a shot to be in this mix. They back that up with their play on the field. Good tweet from friend of the podcast, Bleacher Nation's Michael Cerami. Dansby Swanson in 2023, just 1 homer in March and April, 4 in May, June, and July each, respectively. And then August 1st through the 12th, he's got 5 home runs. So that power is in there. He's showing it. And, I think the whole team, hit into some bad luck at certain points this weekend. A lot of hard hit balls that found gloves. Yeah. So still, feeling really good about this offense 1 through 9. And, again, we can nitpick the lineup and who's in there day in and day out. But overall, I think they've definitely found a better positional group. They found a better groove than we had early in the season. Saw a comment from Evil Wax 73, who's in our chat a lot. Appreciate that. Said, I think Seiya needs a little respect for coming back strong in the past few games. I agree with that. And, that's another one where it's a potentially nice move by David Ross. He sat him down. They didn't start him for a few games at a time. And David Ross was pretty blunt in the media about he's off. His mechanics are all out of whack. He's got to clean this up right now. We're going to give him a little reset. Hasn't been perfect, but, he got that start on the 9th against the Mets. He goes 3 for 4 in that game with a triple and a home run, drove in a run as well. Then to start this series against Toronto, 1 for 3 with a double and 2 RBIs and a walk, 1 for 4 on Saturday, 1 for 4 again on Sunday. So, not perfect, but I think looking a lot better, putting the ball in play a lot better. And, just nice to see him kind of get back out there, try to make the necessary adjustments. And again, that's part of that winning culture, right? Like, you need guys to be able to say, hey, like, we're trying to win games. If I'm not helping the team doing that, I'm going to accept my role. And if that's less, if that's not playing at all, if that's pinch hitting, whatever that is, that's what the team is asking me to do. The team is playing really well right now, and that's my role.
Seiya talked about, the changes he's making and what he's been trying to adjust in his pregame preparation. Guess who he cited? Dansby Swanson and Ian Happ. And what he cited was the amount of focus on the actual current starter they're facing is less for Dansby Swanson and Ian Happ. I guess the idea is like less is more. And what Seiya was doing, according to his comments to the Chicago media, were that he would like set up his drills based on who he was facing that day. And then he mentioned, what, Happ doesn't really do that. Like, Dansby doesn't really do that. They seem to have consistent success. Maybe I should try what they're doing. That's like the clubhouse leadership I'm talking about. Like, that's why stuff like this is important. Like, you lose opportunities to adjust if you're not showcasing like an example. If you're just putting in the bare minimum effort, as a result, you're not giving other players opportunities to go through their own adaptation process. So Seiya's looked awesome. I mean, you know this. We all know this. Like, the potential for Seiya is enormous. Like, even Dustin Kelly has said that. Like, he has the best swing data on the team. It's just a matter of timing, being consistent, trying to find an approach that is, on a day-to-day basis the same, and it's in there. Will it happen? I hope it happens. Am I confident it happens this year? Well, I don't think you can be quite confident, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if we see it.
Yeah, that's fair. So, we're at the hour mark, but,
yeah, keep going.
We do have the ability to keep going today.
We do.
Our wonderful producer, Steven, is off today, so it's just us, which means Brendan and I are not ruining anybody else's Sunday if we talk for 8 hours. We did have a question in the chat. I want to talk about this, and then maybe Alzolay, and then we can
Yeah, if you guys have questions,
get
throw
out
them
of
in
here.
the chat.
As always, hop in that YouTube chat.
Yeah.
We are checking it out. Let us know. But we did have a comment from Chris Roldan. Could PCA be a September call-up realistically? It's an interesting question, Chris. It's a very interesting question because PCA is out of control, to put it lightly.
Yes,
he is just so good. The gift that keeps on giving. There's a lot of hyperbole you can have for PCA. But yesterday I think he doubled and homered. He can steal bases. He's lights out on defense. He's incredible. It's an interesting decision, right? Because you look at this roster and are you going to move guys around? Who's he playing instead of? Is he coming up as a pinch runner, defensive replacement type guy? I don't know. But I do think guys like that, if this is how they want to introduce him to the majors, he is their best prospect. He is their best prospect in a long time. He is one of the best prospects in baseball. So how they decide to go about this is going to be, I think, a lot more about PCA than it is about the 2023 Cubs. But guys that can play really good defense, guys that can fly around the bases, those have a role in a playoff race and on any team, right? And y'all are in the chat freaking out about different guys. I'm sure you can pick one guy you could get rid of off the roster. The rosters don't expand quite like they used to, right, in September. But the skills that he has, having not played a single game in Major League Baseball and having nothing to do with how he would hit Major League pitching, play in the major leagues.
So
and they
you're
would
into
certainly play. Oh, I'm into it. Are you kidding? That's the most, you want to talk about a Dansby Swanson, we're going for it, we're trying to win. That's that kind of move. 100%.
Yeah. Well, I guess the concern is, is he going to be okay with facing major league pitching, given that he was striking out maybe more than you would have liked in Double-A earlier on in the season, although that changed quite significantly towards the back end of his time in Tennessee, when he was only striking out about 20% of the time. And even in Triple-A right now, he's striking out 27% of the time. So I think there's going to be concerns about, if they call him up, maybe some of those things he needs to iron out are actually going to be locked in, those bad habits, if they even exist. I don't quite know, but that's the concern. In my mind, I'm stupid about this, and I know I'm stupid about this. I would promote all these guys so fast, honest, I'm not even joking about this. I think, and there's 40-man implications and all this stuff. So that's always going to hold them back, unfortunately. I think that's an unfortunate part about the whole entire way this sport is structured. But there are certain players who I think, if they get called up, are going to just adjust a little bit faster than your next guy.
He wants that environment.
He does.
You can feel it. Yeah.
And you know, because you've been talking to me for years about this. I think that stuff really matters, a lot. And
listen, I'm envisioning a cool fall-ish September night at beautiful historic Wrigley Field. The Cubs are in a tie game, right? It's late. They bring PCA into pinch run for Yan Gomes, right? And the crowd is going wild. He steals a base. He steals third.
He's doing his celebration things.
That's what I'm envisioning. I don't even need him to hit, right?
That could be his role too. Right?
Yeah, and it's electric, right?
It's
Here comes PCA
electric.
to do his thing on the bases. You get him more acclimated into next year, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
For me,
I'm interested in it. I don't know what their plan is going to be. To get back to Chris's original question, his skill set, I think, fits. But as Brendan said, how do they feel about the K rate? How do they feel about how often he would be playing? He's a massive part of this organization going forward, so they're going to do whatever they feel is the best for his development. They're not going to say, well, we're not sure about this, but we need him to steal bases for the Cubs, major league roster. You can find guys like that to do that if you really are interested in that. Doesn't have to be PCA, right? So they're going to prioritize his development and what they think is the best for that. If they think on and off playing time or whatever that is, like in September with the Cubs is the way to go, then I'm all for it because I think he would provide something to this team, and especially in a playoff race.
I want it. You promote him, put him in this environment, have him with Nico. And
look, I don't want to bring up old wounds. Brendan will probably yell at me for saying this, right? But like the Cubs brought up and rostered Terrence Gore, right, in 2018.
Why do you have to say that?
Because I'm pointing out that PCA can play that role, but he can actually hit. You wouldn't be horrified.
You don't have to like reference examples like that.
Well, I didn't. He's not on the banned name list.
He damn well should be.
No, it wasn't his fault that Joe Madden gave him a bat. Come on. We're not relitigating 2018. We're not doing that. We could. Do you want to? No, I'm kidding.
You go from such a great discussion. This is
people like log on to YouTube and we're like, all right, hour 4. We're now talking about the Craig Kimbrell trade. And
but like you're talking, like you just gave a great visualization of PCA in a crisp Wrigley fall game, and you go straight to that. Like, but
I'm saying he can hit.
Something's wrong with you, dude. Like something's seriously wrong with you. I'm just saying.
Plenty. Plenty. Yeah. Anyway, PCA rules. We'll see how they decide to play that out.
You want to talk about Ben Brown? We got a question about Ben Brown.
It's I think a quick answer, but yeah, sure. If you want to take that.
Yeah, he's not ready yet. Like he's got, he's making significant changes compared to last year. Release points very different. He's trying to find feel for his breaking pitches. Huge variability in his breaking pitches. 2 breaking pitches are kind of merging together, where you have this like sweeper looking pitch and a more pitch that kind of drops north to south. He's not ready yet. The walk rate is above 5. That's one of the moves where I talk about aggression. That would be in a stupidly aggressive move. He's not ready. And, you can see they're trying to limit some of his innings. Got a lot of potential, but I personally would feel very uneasy if he enters a game where you need like 2-3 innings and assuming he can get through it. I don't think he's ready. I hope he can adapt and be okay, but it's not there yet.
Yeah, so he went on the 7-day injured list. A lot of that was kind of speculated to maybe manage his innings, things like that.
Probably is. I will say though, his velocity was decreasing over the past 3-4 starts.
Yeah, I mean, they got to prioritize long-term development. And I think the thing for Brown, it's always a good question because the team needs starts, right? We need to have somebody step up, and, Assad just did that on Friday. But you need people to step up and take control of these opportunities that are given as far as starting and lengthier outings. The thing for Ben Brown, even if he weren't on the injured list, right, is, even in his last few starts, they were good starts, but they're short, 5 innings. And I think what you're looking for from these pitchers is and I think a lot of prospects, like dominance, right?
Yeah.
Like you want a pitcher like Ben Brown to be at the point where you feel kind of like PCA is a little bit, and it didn't work, but Mervis was the first time he was called up, where you're looking at their numbers saying they are done with AAA, right? Yeah. We have little to learn. Maybe they're not going to succeed at the major league level, but before you bring up Ben Brown, you'd like to see a run of starts where it is dominant. He is above pitching to AAA hitters. His last 3 starts, I think, have been good ones. The 4th was a blow-up, a short, 1 1/3, gave up 6 runs or something like that. So you just want a stretch where it's 6, 7 plus and just dominance. Like these AAA hitters don't look like they belong in the same league as this guy. He's just not there yet, which is fine, right? Yeah. The Cubs have a need, but the timeline of prospects can't always match the timeline of the major league roster. That's just how it works, and you can't really rush those things. We always talk about, you look at 2016 when the Chicago Cubs won the World Series. I believe that's what your banner says over your right shoulder, Brendan, yes?
There. World Series, correct, yes.
Yes. We always talk about that. That was impeccable timing on a lot of things, right? You had several veterans have some of the best seasons of their career. You had rookies get called up and play better baseball than they ever would again in their major league career. Some of those guys were out of the majors within 3 or 4 years, right? Timing is everything. And, for this 2023 team, not everything is going to be timed out perfectly. And you're going to prioritize Ben Brown's long-term production for this organization versus can we jam him into this role that we kind of need somebody in. They're just not going to do that. So Evoax asked about Mervis. I don't know. I don't think so, if I'm being honest with you.
I haven't watched these games. I just look at the the numbers. He's whiffing so much more. His whiff rate's 30% all of a sudden. What the hell's going on there?
Yeah, you look at his last 30 games, these numbers are not good. Yeah. So given how much he struggled at the major league level, he's not doing as well in the minors, recently. Overall, his numbers in the minors are still very good. On the season, he's got a 952 OPS. But you look at his, last 30 or so games, these numbers are not very good. So I think it's the same thing because he was struggling at the major league level. I don't see where he would be playing. You don't have time for him to figure it out at the major league level at this point. It's part of the reason that Brendan and many others wanted him up last year so that he could get some experience in a season that had no meaning. Because now you're in a playoff race, you don't have time for that. So unless he was back to killing it in the minors, you don't have time for it, unfortunately. And, we're looking at the game on Sunday saying, I don't think Patrick Wisdom should be playing first base. I think that should be Cody Bellinger or Jamer at this point. I don't really think they should be messing with that.
So, you just call up PCA. That way Bellinger can play first base. Done.
And Mike Tauchman is in right.
Yeah, sure.
DH.
That's fine.
Where's Morel?
They'll figure it out.
Yeah,
they'll figure it out.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the sense on that.
Jordan Wicks, I guess. This one little quick question about Jordan Wicks. Looks good. AAA numbers are good. Command's good. He has a walk per 9 of 3.8. Relatively speaking, that's I think fine for a young pitcher. So K-prime of 7.3, 28 innings and 6 starts. Stuff looks pretty good. He has a pretty good curveball shape. Got a pretty good four-seam fastball. It looks as if they're messing with his slider, kind of some blending of his slider and his curveball that may want to be differentiated more. But I don't think Wicks is quite ready yet either. If he's called up, it would be pretty significant because that means something happened to the Cubs pitching staff, I think. But then again, maybe you want to be aggressive and, you give these guys to Tommy Ottavy and Daniel Moscas or whatever. I would give that a 0.1% chance of happening.
Yeah. I think we've had a lot of those great prospect guys on, Greg Zumack, Greg Huss, Brian Smith. Yeah. You can check out the Cubs on Deck podcast. They do really good work. And I think as we head toward the end of the season here, I would imagine that the CHGO crew, whether it's us or Cody and Ryan and Luke, we'll sit down with one of those guys again as we head toward September to kind of really dial in on hey, who are the guys who can come up right now and help this team? Things like that. One
last little thing on Wicks. His changeup is his dominant secondary offering, right? The curveball he's run 15 times this year. It's very north to south. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So maybe that's one thing they're working on as well. So just not ready yet.
Yeah. There's a lot of excitement in this system. I think Fangraphs recently had them as the second system in baseball.
Second,
right. But again, the timing, sometimes it's going to be it's going to work where you have guys. Don't it, Craig? I love you, Craig, but we don't need more charts.
We didn't talk about Wesneski or Steele yet.
Does anybody care about Hayden Wesneski today?
I don't know. I kind of want to show the chart though. We can do that maybe.
We can stay on forever, but I'm just saying, I don't know. This deep in the show. Sure. You know what I mean? Just do it.
How do you feel about Hayden right now?
Well, I think it's I think he's been put in a tough spot. Right? He's been asked to do a whole host of different things starting earlier in the season, then coming in relief, things like that. And, as we've gotten more recent here with him coming back up and Smiley being moved to the bullpen, now he's doing kind of piggybacks and asked to kind of pick up these starts. It's a tough spot. But, ultimately, he is certainly not getting it done in the way that I think we would have hoped, and that you kind of had the glimmer of hope that he'd be able to do last year. But again, it's a tough spot that he's been put in. Switching roles like that so much is not easy. We've seen the Cubs, and all teams ask guys to do this, right? But we've seen the Cubs ask a lot of guys to do this. Some have had great success, some have not, right? And, sometimes you find that really perfect blend of it where, like, Adbert Alzolay was a starter, then he was a long relief guy, and now he's pitching like one of the best closers in baseball, right? Like, so sometimes you kind of move from A to B to C, and a guy really finds his footing in that role. That's kind of what they're looking for, with Hayden really here. So overall, the numbers haven't been great. His last 7 outings, so on the game today, he's in there and he comes into the dirty inning. He doesn't take any of those earned runs, but runs are scoring while he was pitching, but he doesn't technically give up any earned runs. So his last 7 games, he's got a sub-3 ERA, again, in very different kind of roles that he's being asked. So I think all things considered, it's fine. Just like Assad did on Friday, though, you're really looking for some of these guys to kind of plant their flag and step up and really provide that meaningful production for the team.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing the comments here, from good friend Vanilla Chill, who thinks that his stuff plays best as a starter. The volume of stuff that he has, like, I agree. I think, like, he has a good opportunity to be a starter. I don't think his current mix is going to bring him to that consistent role as a starter. I've always been very high on Wesneski. Like, whenever you see sweeping pitches that have like at most 20 inches of horizontal break, that has to like automatically put you to the top of like the potential list. And I still think that I'm still quite confident in his overall future. Just he has to go through stuff right now to reach that potential. And specifically, I think it's a good contrast when we talk about like why Stroman's so good. Why do we need Stroman back? If you look at what Stroman does well, he can handle lefties and righties. So these are like every single pitch both Stroman and Hayden have thrown this year. If you're on the Apple or Spotify feed, come over to YouTube, you can see these charts. But on the left, you're seeing that Stroman against left-handed batters throws a ton of cutters, which are colored here in brown, up and in to left-handed batters. Now, if you look at what Hayden does, Hayden doesn't quite do that. He doesn't throw as many cutters against left-handed batters. And in fact, the command of that pitch is kind of all over the place to left-handed batters. And you see more red, or you see more four-seam fastballs to left-handed batters. That is not going to play for Hayden because he has a lot of arm side run on his four-seam fastball. And he knows this. He even said himself he needs his four-seam to be average. So the biggest problem with Hayden this year has been against left-handed batters. And he's getting hit hard. He's not walking guys. He's just getting hit hard. And it's because he doesn't have that ability to go into lefties with hard stuff. They're working on it. And I think one of the most encouraging signs of Hayden is that he's just he seems to be like a workaholic. He talks and breathes baseball whenever I listen to the guy talk to the media. And you can tell like he really genuinely cares and will put in the effort to get to that point. And the cutter right now, I think for me, I don't think he's going to get his fastball to be league average, given some of his underlying mechanics. Like, I think like he just has a ton of, I imagine this, I haven't seen it, but I imagine this on like the slow-mo camera. It's going to have a ton of like supination so that we can like throw tons of sweeping pitches. I think for him, that cutter is going to be the biggest difference. If he handles that cutter with confidence, throws that pitch like 30+% of the time, maybe half the time to left-handed batters, then there you go. Like, that's probably your starting pitcher. Now, it's not happening. I would not expect that to happen this year whatsoever. His role should be right now mostly against right-handed batters. But my hope is you come into 2024 and that cutter clicks. And if it does click, I think you have a good chance that he'll be valuable against, both handedness and a good starter.
Yeah. Listen. If you guys have another podcast where you're getting graphs like that at the hour and 17-minute mark of the show, all the power to them, but I don't think that's happening. Wait till you see what we have for the 3.5-hour mark for you today. Man. No, I'm kidding. We're almost done. I swear.
We're doing this.
We do appreciate y'all. If you're listening live on YouTube, appreciate y'all hopping in. I know Sunday, the Cubs lost. So even though they took 2 of 3, not quite as like hype as we were sort of hoping. Interesting stat from Megan Montemuro of the Chicago Tribune. When the Cubs have won the first 2 games in a 3-game series, the Cubs are 4-8 in that final game. Honestly, I would have expected worse. Feels like when they go for the sweep, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
That's just me. Carlos says we're going to get a pitch clock violation on the stream.
Maybe.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Last thing, and then I swear we're done. Right. I do want to, again, we've talked about him a lot. We've talked about him in depth, so we don't have to stick to it too much. But Alzolay is just incredible, man. 2.39 ERA. That FIP is sitting right at about 2.68. So those numbers like pretty in line with one another as far as like how he's doing controlling the batted ball data. But just on that, like he finishes the game on Friday, doesn't get the save because it was a 4-run lead, but then comes back the next day, picks up his 16th save with a clean inning. What I really loved about that game on Saturday, obviously we've talked about Steele to Alzolay games, right? Our guy Ryan Herrera wrote a great piece about their friendship over their years in the organization over at allchgo.com. But I love those games, but more particularly, right, this is against a really good Blue Jays offense, a very competitive playoff hunt Blue Jays team. And you look at the way the Cubs did that game on Saturday. Justin Steele goes 5, gives up 3. Michael Fulmer comes in and gives up a run. He has been on a really solid stretch here, so it's okay, right, that he gave up a run in that outing. They follow with Leiter Jr., Quas, Merriweather, Alzolay. They all shut the door. That's really nice. Earlier in the year, we had a lot of concerns about the bullpen as they came out of the gate, but to see them lock down a 1-run win, right? A game where the offense had to show up late, right? They had to score that run in the 9th inning to take that lead, to avoid extras, to win that game. And this pitching staff wins a tight game against that Blue Jays offense with what right now looks like, as our guy Cody Del Mendo would say, the raw circle of trust pretty much in order, right? Yeah. Coming out of that bullpen. That game on Saturday, you're going to look at as potentially maybe not all of those guys getting in the game, right? Justin Steele is going to go longer in some of those games, but that's what we're going to call a little bit of a kind of roadmap for how this team is going to win some games, right? Those pitchers that are participating on Saturday, that's going to be the group that's going to try to win you a lot of games going forward.
And that attitude he has, that video that you made of him like fist pumping, Corey, of all the closers in my memory, he's like the most electric guy celebrating those wins, right?
Yeah.
Just next level. I think for me, I always wanted Alzolay to get the opportunity this year. Like even going into the year, I think we said this in like April. Like
you were definitely on record of asking for that before it happened.
I want Alzolay to be the guy. At the same time, one of the areas of concern is not the right word, but like one of the things you could see it not working in is just like he's not getting like whiffs. But of all the guys in the bullpen going into the year that had a track record of like dating back for multiple years, even with Alzolay's injuries, Alzolay's slider had the best like whiff rate. So for me, I was always thinking, like in the 9th inning, given the Cubs' current bullpen, just give me the guy that's going to get the whiffs. Like, I don't care about anything else. I just don't want to deal with blue pits. And for the first month and 2 months, Alzolay was going through some different slider shapes, and he was talking to actually our guy Ryan Herrera about this. And they ended up settling on this like faster slider to left-handed batters. And for the earlier months, his whiff rate was like only 23 to 25%. And I'm like, you know what? Maybe I kind of want to have more whiffs. Well, he's getting more whiffs now. Now those whiffs, that whiff rate's up to 30%. So he's actually gotten better, like over the course of the year, and he's looking like that guy. So I think for Alzolay now, it's just a matter of keep it up. Like of all relievers, of all closers, Alzolay's ability to hammer the strike zone, his walk per 9 is like 1.2, 1.3. It's insane. You combine that with the whiff rate, like, he's doing things that give me a lot of relief. Not walking guys and making guys miss and whiff more than he's ever done in the past. So he's your guy. He's your closer. He's got the attitude. I love it. I feel confident. I feel very comfortable when he's in the game. I think that's the biggest telltale is like when you and I feel comfortable about a pitcher.
I am never comfortable, but
that's true.
Yes,
relatively speaking.
All right. Want to say thanks to one more of our sponsors, and we'll take a look at the Cubs' upcoming schedule here, and we will let you get on with your Sunday. Pardon me, Brendan. I need to put on
look at that.
My Shady Rays before I do this. And we are, of course, talking about our sponsor, Shady Rays. Take on the sun with gear built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered for the warm weather ahead with premium polarized shades at an affordable price. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers a world-class products that's just as good as any expensive pair we've worn. Durable frames and extremely clear optics for outdoor adventures. That is not all. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost and broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair. No questions asked. Wear your Shady Rays with confidence because they have your back long after you purchase. Together with their customers, Shady Rays is providing much-needed support to nonprofit partners across the U.S. through Shady Rays Impact. From building playsets for pediatric cancer patients to providing young adults with MS the outdoor adventure of a lifetime, Shady Rays is making an impact in your community and others like it now and for years to come. If you don't love your Shady Rays, exchange for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself. The shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people. If they can make me look good, they can make you look good. That's the truth. We love our Shady Rays. So last thing as we get out of here, just looking at the upcoming schedule, Brendan. So the Cubs are off on Monday. White Sox here at beautiful historic Wrigley Field on Tuesday and Wednesday, both at 7:05. Another off day on Thursday, so 2 off days in this particular week. Then the Royals come to town, then a road trip to Detroit and Pittsburgh, and then you finish off the month welcoming back the Milwaukee Brewers to beautiful, historic Wrigley Field. I'm just going to throw it out there, Brendan. This is the stretch that ends with the Cubs in first place. This is how it has to happen. You are playing bad baseball teams for the next 2 weeks, and then you welcome Craig Counsell and his Brewers to Wrigley Field. End the month of August in first place. That's what I want. Take care of business against bad teams, and then show the Brewers who you are since you last played them. The last time we saw the Milwaukee Brewers, a very different Chicago Cubs team than you were looking at right now. Obviously, the season has another month beyond this, but if you do your job against bad teams who you have been taking care of business against, right, for the most part, except for the New York Mets, but for the most part, right, then you take care of business at home, handle your own business, take care of what's in front of you, end the month of August in first place in the National League Central. That's my vision.
I can't wait for that series. Just like Dansby out there, Nico out there, Belly out there.
Yep.
Like that's got to be the most. I mean, you go to all these games, like probably the most hyped for a series since 2019, 2018.
Depending on what those standings look as we head into that, that's going to be crazy. I mean, that Red series, last week or whatever was hype, because they came in first place. The Cubs were 4 games out. You had 4 games with them. That was an electric environment. This will be, tenfold.
Oh, man. Yeah. We'll see. At the same time, just hearing you say that, I always start thinking what's the worst case scenario, but
of course you do.
I know. But they've been playing so well. I think looking more short term, seeing Stroman back, he should be back. If he's looking good, if Stroman's looking like the normal guy we saw in April, May, and June, oh my God, my confidence is going to go sky high. Because I'm just assuming Steele's going to be that guy. Then you match that with what you saw from Stroman, and then Dansby powers increase, Belly's healthy, Nico's hitting for bombs. Nico may hit 12, 15 home runs. 15's a little bit too much, but he may actually hit 12 home runs this year. It's exciting. So get Stroman back, get the bullpen stable in the middle of their bullpen with Smiley and Wesneski, I will feel really good.
Yeah. And look, you can't control what the Brewers do. You can only control when you play them, right? So where they end up in the standings at the end of this stretch, we'll see. But the important thing is you're playing bad teams. The White Sox, the Royals, the Tigers, the Pirates, you need to be cleaning up on wins. This team has done a good job of that, and that's what they need to focus on. We're going to scoreboard watch. We'll do the scoreboard watching for them, right? But they just need to keep doing what they're doing since this All-Star break. They are on an incredible run of winning series. The only 2 series they've dropped since the All-Star break is that first one against the Red Sox and earlier this week against the Mets. Again, back-to-back weekends here, winning a series against the Braves, winning a series against a playoff hopeful, a very good team in Toronto, the Blue Jays on the road. Come back home here, take care of business against some bad teams, go on the road, take care of business against some bad teams, and then you get Milwaukee, then you can worry about Milwaukee. But for now, head down, win some games. If you're in the live YouTube chat or watching later, hit that thumbs up, that like button. It does help us reach some more Cubs fans. And
So
other
you ready
than
for
that,
2 more hours? You want to take a break and come back here?
Not really.
I got my water. I got my, what is this, like some filter?
I think if the Cubs had won today, we would have broken a record for like an 8-hour broadcast. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
They did take 2 of 3. They're playing very good baseball. To Eric's question here, the next CHGO Cubs broadcast will be on Monday, an off-day show. It is slated for 1:20, just like my hat says.
Look at that.
Yeah. So that is what we have for you. We appreciate you joining us on the Sunday edition of the CHGO Cubs podcast. We appreciate all of your support for the CHGO Cubs podcast. I do want to give a belated birthday shout out to loyal listener Sam Blake. Appreciate you, Sam. Happy belated birthday. If you are coming to the CHGO Takeover event at Wrigley Field on Wednesday, I will be there. We'll see you at Almost Home on Clark and Grace. Cubs and White Sox, August 16th. We are really looking forward to that. We will talk to you guys soon. Again, 1:20 tomorrow. Cody, Ryan, Luke will have you for your Cubs off-day show. Cubs back on Tuesday night here against the White Sox. Brendan and I will talk to you next Sunday. And as always, go Cubs.